Welcome to my channel. If you have been here before, welcome back. If you are new here, then welcome and thank you for coming. So today we are talking about the differences between the Walking Dead comics and the Walking Dead show, because there are a lot, as a lot of you fans may know if you watch. If you don't, not sure why you're watching this video, but do what you want. The first one we are talking about, which this one, a lot could be said about this one, is the difference in the show and the comics with how they did Carol and Sophia. Let's talk about Carol first. In the show, she had amazing character development. She went from a scared, abused wife to a wolf in sheep's clothing who will do whatever it takes to protect the people that she loves. In the comics, it's very different for her. For one, she didn't start off as the abused wife because Ed had already died prior to the start of the comics. He was not alive. He died, I'm pretty sure, I don't think he died before, it's been a second. I don't think he died before the comic, before the zombie apocalypse started, but he died before the comic took place. But she had not great development in the comics. She, as time went by, she did not go crazy from her daughter dying, because her daughter did not die. But she does, however, she survives in the show. She becomes a badass, and she does all this, that, and the other, gets her own show. However, in the comics, she kills herself. She tries to make out with Lori. She tries to make out with Rick. Tries to bring up being a threesome with them and raising Sophia and Carl together. And then, when they say no, when they decline, she goes up to a zombie and lets a zombie bite her, which is absolutely insane. Your daughter is alive. Well, other people have lost their kids, their loved ones. And just because you're lonely and you want someone to be with, you're gonna go and make out with a married woman and a married man, try and kiss them? They were not having it. Either of them were. Especially Lori. She was freaked out. But in the show, Carol ends up doing so much great. She saved everyone multiple times. She had great progress and she had great character development. I feel like she could have gotten that in the comics, but that's not how they went with the comics, and they did it differently. Well, technically they did it differently in the show because the comics came out first, but yeah. Now for Sophia. Of course, anyone who's watched the show knows she's other than Amy, she's one of the first people to die. They get to Herschel's farm, look for her, they can't find her anywhere, and then they find her in the barn, already dead. It goes way differently in the comics. Not that I can remember, I don't think she dies in the comics. She survives, and she actually ends up marrying Carl, who also dies in the show, but not in the books, comics. But Sophia's character development in the comics was one of my favorite things. Her relationship with Glenn and Maggie, as seeing them as parental figures because they took care of her after Carol died. Their relationship was beautiful. She was practically Herschel Jr.'s older sister, and she was part of their family whenever Maggie was leading Hilltop and all of that. She marries Carl, and she ends up being a very big person into the plot. but they decided to just scrap her in the show, I guess. I'm actually not sure why they made that decision that early on in the show. I mean, it might have been with the actors. Alright. Our next topic is Judith. Well, Judith and Lori. Lori, she was not a good character in the show or the comics, in my opinion. I'm not trying to tell you what to think. In my opinion, she was not a good character in either. But their deaths are very different. In the show, she dies giving birth to Judith, and then Carl shoots her and puts her down. And then Judith lives. While in the comics, she does not die giving birth. She dies during the war with the governor. Lori gets shot, and it goes through her and it goes through Judith as a baby, and they both die. Neither of them survive past the prison in the comics. While in the show, Judith grows up and she becomes a big part of the show, a big character, and she's loved by all, she's a very great character, and she is very much she's definitely Rick's child. However, biologically, maybe not, but that is Rick and Michonne's child. This next one, it's a very, very big one. The relationship difference that they decided to go with for Rick after Lori dies. With the show having Rick and Michonne get together because the actors had great chemistry, and it's just how it ended up working. But they practically swapped Andrea and Michonne's characters from the comics to the shows. Michonne was the needy one, the one that was really trying to just, like, she was really trying to get with whoever she can so she won't be lonely. Like when Tyrese cheated on Karen with her in the prison, and then Karen dies. But yeah, I'm not sure why they decided to go with him getting with Michonne. I'm pretty sure it is because of the fact that in the first season they tried to see if the actor for Rick and the actor for Andrea would have chemistry, like whenever they're stuck in the city in Atlanta, but it didn't work. So instead they scrapped that. They end up putting Andrea with the governor, and then end up killing her off, and then Rick and Michonne start liking each other, which I've had arguments with people that there was no chemistry or no build-up between Rick and Michonne in the show before they got together, but I do not believe that is true. I think if you rewatch it and you pay close enough attention, you will see the fact that they 100% had crushes. Like, I honestly thought that they had a little bit of chemistry in the comics too, with the both of them kind of seeing things like they're dead lovers. And then you have the relationship of Rick and Andrea in the comics. I loved Andrea's character in the comics. She was a great shot. She ends up being another mother to Carl. She dies heroically. She dies saving everyone. But they did her dirty in the show. But I think in the comic there was way less build up for their relationship than there was with Michonne and Rick in the show. I feel like it was very sudden, right after Jessie dies. Well, I guess not right after, but like after she dies, which is the first person he loved after Lori, and just after she dies, he's just like, oh ho ho, come on Andrea, let me see some of that. which is interesting. That's my opinion on that one. Now the differences between show Carl and movie comic Carl. In the comics, Carl was one of the biggest characters towards the end of the comics. Rick dies. He ends up dying in the comics, and Carl lives on, and he deals with a lot of the stuff that they dealt with in the show, except for he was actually growing up, and he didn't die after all of the Negan stuff, and he actually played a bigger part in it because, like I said in my last video, in the show, they wouldn't pay him correctly, so he ended up leaving to go to college, which is very upsetting. I understand why he had to do it, but it's very upsetting, and it did take away a key part of the comics to add into the books, into the show. I suck at English, my bad. And just the fact that both Carl and Sophia die in the show when they grow up and get married in the comics is insane to me. I think that their relationship that grew in the comics was a very big part of their characters, and I really wish they would have played with that with the show more instead of just killing Sophia off first go. I feel like they would not have had such a hard time giving Carl a love interest if they did not kill Sophia off. If they kept Sophia, she would have been the perfect love interest because that's just how it worked in the comics. Also, I just wish we got to see more with Sophia's actor in the show. I feel like that little girl could have done a lot with the show. Everyone's favorite, Daryl and Merle. The fact that they don't exist in the comics, but they added them into the show. I think it was a very good add. Daryl added a lot into the show that just wouldn't have been the same if they didn't. It helped with the plot, I think, a lot more than they thought it would, and that's why he was not supposed to really survive after the first season, but he was such a fan favorite that they weren't going to kill him off, and now he has his own show. And his and Carol's friendship is like the best thing. R.I.P. Merle. I know he was an asshole, he was a douchebag, but to the end, he always loved his brother, and to the end, he would do anything to help him, to save his brother. And he did that. He did save his brother. Well, I mean, his brother's alive. I mean, he doesn't exactly stop the governor, but a little bit. Okay. My least favorite difference between the show and the comics is Dale and Andrea's relationship in the comics. While in the show, they had more of like a father-daughter kind of thing, where like he tried to tell her what to do and she was not having it, she didn't want to listen to him. While in the comics, if you've ever read them, they bone. Very large age gap. One of the other characters, what was her name? I can't remember her name. She was that old lady, not really old, but she was the one that was dating. Okay, cannot remember their names, but they had the twins. Ben and Billy, which also Dale and Andrea adopted them after Alan and his wife. I'm gonna hope. Alan and his wife. Dana? I think it starts with a D, but very large age gap, very odd, but that lady clocked it as soon as it was happening, and she turned out to be right. I actually honestly was not expecting her to be right. I thought that after watching the show and then going to read the comics, I thought that they were going to have that father-daughter relationship that they had in the show, but then they did not. And I understand, but I do not think that Dale truly loved her. I think Andrea truly loved him because, for one, like, even a year after he died, she still wore his hat. But I think that after his wife died, he was heartbroken and he was lonely and he wanted someone. Because I believe in the comics, she did not die of cancer like she did in the show, and she died at the beginning of the apocalypse before we meet anyone. But I think he was lonely, and I think he was using her for the fact that he was lonely and he had nobody. And I think she deserved better than that, and the fact that she was so hung up over it, over him dying after he died, he should not have been that hung up over it. She should not have been that hung up over it. I honestly liked his character better in the show than in the comics. Because he was like a voice of reason in both, but the whole Dale and Andrea situation in the comics kind of weirded it out for me, and I just couldn't really like him after that. Okay, our next one is Rick losing his hand. Because, yes, in the newest Rick and Michonne show, he lost his hand, but that's way later than it happened in the comics. Obviously, because that's also, in the comics, he died way before then. But in the show, in the comics, I believe it's with the governor that he loses his hand. So that's like prison, really early on into the comics. He loses his hand, and in the show, he doesn't lose his hand until the newest one, after he was supposed to die in the comics. So that was a little odd. Actually, whenever I was watching the Rick and Michonne show, I forgot that he lost his hand in the comics, and I was watching and I was like, oh my god, he lost a hand. Is that not something we're not going to do to the main character? And then I realized, I remembered, I was like, oh yeah, he lost his hand in the comics as well. So, but our last thing we are talking about is Morgan. In the comics, Morgan was in the first issue, but after that, he does not appear. I do remember at the end of the first comic, at the back pages of it, it said something about like making some short story with him and Dwayne, but I don't think that they ever did that, and if they have, I just haven't read them. But in the show, they decided to do something different, and they decided to bring him back, which I think was a very great decision, because he played a very big role in it, and then obviously he played, like I said last time, he was one of my favorite parts of Fear, so I am glad that they brought him back so that they could put him into that show. But I think all of his stuff that happened with Eastman and with Mo and with Grace, I think it was very clever to do that after he just wasn't in the comics anymore. They got, like Daryl, they got a lot of leeway to do whatever they wanted with him after that. And they took that leeway and they did very great with it. And I absolutely love it. One more thing I want to mention is the fact that of Ezekiel's death. My third favorite character. Absolutely love him and Shiva. But the fact that he died in the comics by his head getting put on a spike by Alpha was heartbreaking. I watched the show, saw everyone that was on there, and he survived. One of my favorite characters, and then I go and read the comics, and his head ends up on a spike. I'm gonna tell you, whenever I flipped to that page, I almost bawled my eyes out. It was bad. I'm very glad that they did not give him that death in the show, although it is still kind of upsetting that they gave him cancer. But can't remember what they're called, but the people that they meet right after they meet Princess, absolutely love her character, and I am so glad that they added her, because she was a very last minute thing to even the comics. And she was in like the last comic, and she was also in the last season. Great character. Absolutely love Princess Juanita. Period. I even named one of my stuffed animals after her. Okay, I will see you later. Bye!